So now we will move forwards, आगे बढ़ेंगे and we will try to see the next vritti. So अब तक हमने देखा what is praman, what are the types of praman. Then we saw what is viparya, मतलब right knowledge क्या है, wrong knowledge क्या है. Now we will see what is vikalpa. So what exactly is vikalp according to योग दर्शन. तो भगवान महर्षि पतंजलि ने क्या कहा अपने 9वें सूत्र में, शब्द ज्ञानानुपाति वस्तु शून्य विकल्प. शब्द इज वर्ड, ज्ञान इज नॉलेज, अनुपाति मीन्स फॉलोइंग टू और डिपेंडेंट अपॉन, वस्तु इज द सब्सटेंस, शून्य विच इज डिवाइड ऑफ इज कॉल्ड विकल्प. तो इसका मीनिंग क्या होगा, विकल्प और इमेजिनेशन is based on merely wordy knowledge or understanding which is devoid of the actual substance. So it is just an imagination of anything. It can be again praman और विपर्य को भी हम ले सकते हैं यहाँ पर, but imagination can be anything, and imagination need not have a proper substance which can correspond to the reality. It can be anything. So let us understand what is exactly this vritti now. So now we come to the other kind of vritti in which there is no such contact and the mental image is pure creation of the mind. So the actual contact with the knowledge is not there. मतलब कि जो ज्ञान कराने वाली या ज्ञान का बोध कराने वाली जो एक्टिविटी है वो यहाँ पर नहीं है. इट इज़ टोटली इमेजिनेशन ऑफ योर माइंड. आपके मन की एक अपनी तस्वीर है जिसको यू आर ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो इट इज़ बेसिकली ए प्योर क्रिएशन ऑफ योर माइंड विच इज़ नॉट एट ऑल रिलेटेड विद द एक्चुअल सब्सटेंस. सो इफ द mental modification does not or is not based upon the actual experience in the past, suppose if it is not based on the actual experience of the past or has nothing to correspond to in the field of actual experience, but it is a pure creation of mind, then it is called fancy or imagination. So a mental image or the knowledge which is not at all based on your experience और विच डजेंट कम इन द फील्ड ऑफ योर एक्सपीरियंस, अगर वो उस चीज़ को आपने अनुभव ही नहीं किया है कभी, देन इट इज़ ए इमेजिनेशन और विकल्प. इफ़ इट इज़ जस्ट ए प्योर इमेजिनेशन कि दिस इज़ गोइंग टू बी लाइक दिस और दिस इज़ गोइंग टू बी लाइक दिस विदाउट हैविंग द एक्चुअल एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट. सो सपोज ए पर्सन हु टॉक्स अबाउट योगा. अब आप लोगों को बुरा लग सकता है बट सुनना पड़ेगा. पर्सन कम्स टू यू एंड ही सेज दैट ही नोस योगा. नाउ you go and start learning practices from him. Now he is teaching you only one asana and two pranayamas and he says he knows yoga. Now the actual substance of yoga is something different. If you are follower of Ashtanga yoga, it is 8 limbs. If it is Kundalini yoga, it is some other thing. If Bhakti yoga, some other thing. But overall yogic practice is totally different. It does not confine itself to one asana or one pranayam. So imagination that I know everything. Imagination again, it is nourishing your kleshas, your asmita. So it can be totally different from the reality. You have to understand, imagination is not at all close or in relationship with the reality. It is totally different from the reality. So playing with fanciful thoughts or words, living in one's own world of thoughts, मतलब कि you think and that this is the reality, like many people thought, and because this is the time when things are also happening around us like that. So many people thought ki the world will be like this, but it is not like that. So what will happen when the reality doesn't meet with the with its actual experience, and you think that whatever imagination you have of that substance is the reality, then you are far away from the reality. So impressions which have no substantial basis, any impression you may have, any thought you may have about anything, any man, any substance, but it may not have a substantial basis or the proof, is vikalp. A vague and uncertain knowledge which does not correspond to the reality is called विकल्प. तो विकल्प क्या है? विकल्प एक धारणा है जो हमने बना ली है मन में, पाल ली है मन में. अब एक धारणा ये हो सकती है कि अहम ब्रह्मास्मि, मैं ही सबसे बड़ा ज्ञानी हूँ, मुझसे बड़ा कोई संसार में नहीं है, और बाकी जो लोग भी आपसे कुछ भी कह रहे हैं, योर एक्शंस आर नॉट लाइक दैट, सो डेफिनेटली यू आर अवे फ्रॉम दैट. तो ये बहुत बड़ी अवधारणा है. एक्चुअल रूप जो है ज्ञान का और उसके बारे में जो आप इमेजिनेशन कर रहे हैं, दोनों में बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंस है. सो ऑलवेज रिमेंबर द एक्चुअल सब्सटेंस और द सब्सटेंशियल नॉलेज, and whatever you are talking about that, or whatever your thought process is there about that knowledge, if it doesn't match, then it becomes a vikalpa. So if vikalpa is brought to the level of factual knowledge, लेकिन यही विकल्प अगर एक फैक्चुअल नॉलेज के लेवल पे लेके आते हैं, if vikalpa is brought to the level of factual knowledge by analysis, trial and error, along with the discrimination of what is right, what is wrong, what is clished, what is aclished, it can awaken a thirst for correct or true knowledge. So vikalp is definitely a imagination of certain things which may not be close to the reality, or it may be totally different from the reality, but it can be brought to the level of the factual knowledge by the analysis of anything, whatever vikalp it is, whatever imagination it is. You can do the analysis of that particular thing. You can do trial on that. You can see trial and error and finally discriminate what is right and what is wrong, and finally you get the factual knowledge. So it can awaken a thirst for correct or true knowledge, and delusion can be transformed into the vision and discovery. And this vikalp can be transformed into the vision and discovery, where it can give you the actual truth about the knowledge. So vikalp is also very, very important vritti, which has to be again, you can say it has to be again cultured, and total nirodha of this, or total cessation or inhibition of this vritti also is very much important. Otherwise you will see today most of the people, they live in the world of imaginations. A student sitting in his hostel, a teacher sitting in his chamber, a doctor sitting in his chamber, keeps imagining that yes, if I read this, this will be the marks I will be getting. Sitting here, a doctor imagines कि okay, more and more patients will come and more money I can earn. A teacher will think कि okay, I can teach so many things to my students. So it is imagination, but unless and until you do hard work, unless and until the analysis, trial and error and discrimination comes in between, you cannot achieve what you want to achieve. Unless and until you do analysis, yes, you want good marks, but you haven't studied. So if you don't study, you will not get good marks. So imagination is not going to work. So there was a little technical glitch, no problem. So we were discussing that if you don't do the analysis and if you don't do the proper discrimination, you will be in that imagination only. So a doctor who wants to achieve something, only imagination will not give you what you want to do in your life. You have to do hard work, analysis, what all things are required, then discrimination of right and wrong things, and then finally trial and error methods, and then finally you come to the factual knowledge and transform whatever you want to do. So it is very important that imagination has to be controlled with the help of practices of yoga, so that it can be brought back to the factual practices of knowledge. Now, imagination is any belief. What exactly is imagination? Is a belief or statement that amounts to only the meanings of the words it is couched in and does not actually attains its intended object. So basically, in imagination, you keep on, like, you dream something that you will fly in the air, but there is no air and there is no fly. So nothing corresponds to the reality, because you may have a thought but it does not go to that. So it is basically the words in which your mind keeps on wandering, and the intended object also sometimes. So for example, the self has a measure which is infinite. One simplest example, this self or Atma is infinite basically. But in imagination, instead of, correct, the self has no measure, because if you imagine that self is infinite, but automatically you will see that every mind tries to measure the self, even though we know it is infinite and self has no measure. So because the mind cannot attain the actual conception of infinite measure. So exactly what is infinite? अनंत क्या है? Nobody knows, किसी को नहीं पता. तो it is only imagination कि self is infinite और अनंत है. So similar to that, imagination is also technically present in much of what we believe, especially regarding what is subtle. So anything which is subtle has to be imagined basically, and things which are subtle can be again difficult to imagine, because you cannot measure it. Again, difficult to measure also. But regarding subtle matters, that must be understood instead of believed. Imagination hinders progress in yoga. So it is a cliché type of vritti, because too much of imagination, that yes, I know yoga, and that can become a cliché vritti for you, because in yoga there is no one who can say that I have mastered this sadhana. I meet many people they talk, this is my this name, this is my spiritual name. See, spiritual name, we cannot decide that yes, from today I have started doing few asanas, so I can be called as some name with some other name. No, not like that. You have to be initiated in the field of yoga. Diksha. You should be initiated in the field of yoga. After taking Diksha, there are set of rules and regulations which have to be followed, which are based on the factual knowledge. It is not imagination. But most of the people, those who are practicing yoga today, they are in the field of imagination only, because they think that what they are doing is right, but the reality is something different. So imagination or vikalp, when gives a status of reality, becomes an error or viparya. So when this imagination reaches to the state of reality, ये imagination जो है आपका, विकल्प जो है, अगर इसको आप सच मान लें, इफ़ यू थिंक इट इज़ द रियलिटी, यही विकल्प जो है अगर इसको आप सत्य मान लें तो इसी को आप विपर्य कहते हैं. So imagination, when it is given the status of reality, it becomes the error. So always remember, if you want to be free from all these things, you have to go away from all these things. You have to always see that this vikalp has to be disintegrated by the proper practice, yogic practices, analysis, trial and error methods, and discrimination towards the factual side of the knowledge, not towards the viparya and vikalp. So hence viparya is sometimes also called imagination. तो हम विपर्य को भी imagination कह सकते हैं, because anything which is wrong can be imagined only. first. And anything which can be experienced directly by one hand, and direct experience is nothing but your praman. So because error has both ignorance and imagination at its basis. So it is a covering of the fact, the ignorance, and then the projecting, superimposing something else in its place. So because of the covering of ignorance and then projecting or superimposing something else in its place, so there is no reality with the substance and the product of it. So imagination with ignorance is hindering, since it limits one's progress in clear understanding of reality. So it is a klishta vritti. When vikalp is done with the ignorance, avidya, it hinders the path of self-realization. So imagination with knowledge is the worst non-hindering, like enjoyment of reading a book of fiction. So vikalp with the knowledge, so you have imagination and you are trying to add it without any factual discrimination, trial and analysis. If you just try to follow that, it will be just like reading a book of fiction, because your mind will not be able to absorb it properly, because you will just see it as a film. So see that vikalp and viparya both have to be disintegrated by the practice of yogic sadhanas, so that you go close to the sadhana, not away from the sadhana. So now what we have seen, praman we have seen, what is right knowledge, types of praman we have seen, then viparya we have seen, vikalp we have seen. So viparya and vikalp are two aspects of the same coin, because any imagination can be viparya and most of the imaginations are viparya, and viparya can be imagined again. So now we will go to the next vritti, which is called nidra. And it is a very important vritti, because most of the people, those who think that nidra is very important, so whether it is the same physiological sleep or it is something else, so let us try to understand that now.